Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining me as we spend this next hour together. I am hoping that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. My opening observation tonight, as I look around the country, I can see that people are discouraged and so many people are disheartened and so many people are concerned about the uncertainty that's in their lives, filling them with doubt. Well, the one thing that we need that can help us get through this pandemic that has claimed nearly 200,000 lives. The one thing we need as we go through this financial undertow that's pulling so many of us down, where people are standing in food lines because they can't find any food to eat because they've lost their jobs. In the midst of all of this, we need leaders to encourage us, to say it's going to get better. We've got work to do, but it's going to get better. Encouragement. You see, encouragement is one of those words that inspires with courage. We need courage to face the daunting challenges ahead of us. It also gives us spirit. We need the spirit to get through this, to say that against all odds, we can win this together. And we need hope, hope that prevails, hope that assures us that we can be enheartened and encouraged to make it. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, not tear each other down. My mother used to tell me when I was a child that the only time I should be down on someone is when I'm helping them get up. America, that's what we've got to do. Instead of putting each other down, let's build each other up with this wonderful gift of encouragement. William Beckton used to sing a song saying, "Be encouraged no matter what's going on. He'll make it all right, but you gotta be strong." And those are my opening observations. So joining me now are my good friends from the West Coast Connection, and they are in the house to talk about all things that are going on politically with regard to the president speaking last night to a lot of tough questions. But before we get into that, gentlemen, we need to talk about the Breonna Taylor settlement out of the city of Louisville, Kentucky. I'm talking to Timothy Allen Simon, attorney, owner of TAS Strategies, as well as the chairman of the Black Chamber of Commerce in California. And then attorney Mark Harris, civil rights attorney, represents the Ben Crump Law Firm. He's a partner with that firm based in Sacramento. Like I said, the West Coast Connection is here. And whenever they're here, you can be sure they're going to be talking about a lot of things going on politically. First round, Breonna Taylor, $12 million settlement to her family. It does not bring her back. And that is the saddest part of all of this. This didn't have to happen. But it has come with some caveats in terms of police reform. Mark, your colleague, Ben Crump, represents the family. What's his statement and what's your statement?
I spoke to Attorney Crump yesterday. I'm so proud to be affiliated with this law firm. I want to thank you again, Kelly, for having me on your show and giving me a chance to speak to your viewers. Attorney Crump is the Thurgood Marshall of our generation. He really is. He has brought into our firm all of the major cases in police violence that have affected the African-American community throughout the country. As you know, we represent many families, the family of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and on and on and on. And the latest one is this $12 million settlement in Louisville. It's major. From my early research, I think it is the highest award or settlement that has ever been presented to an African-American family for the loss of one of their loved ones, an African-American female. It's very important to emphasize the fact that Breonna Taylor was a Black woman. I am so proud of Naomi Osaka and others who have continued, all of the women in the WNBA, to remind America that this doesn't just befall African-American men, it befalls African-American women as well. So $12 million to the family. Breonna Taylor's mother was very clear in saying that this can't bring her daughter back. There are several reforms that I'd like to go into in more detail. I'm most proud of the fact that besides the money that was brought to her mother, that you have some new sustainable changes in law enforcement in the city of Louisville, Kentucky, which I'd like to discuss in a couple of minutes.
All right, Timothy, the mayor of Louisville apologized on behalf of the city to Breonna Taylor's mother and family. Uh, does that settle with you? I mean, more work still needs to be done, right?
Well, I think the apology was important. And as Mark and I both know, when you make an admission, basically, an apology can be viewed as an admission. That's a major statement for a public official. So I don't want in any way discount or mitigate the importance of a formal apology. But more so, as Mark will go into more detail, but the reforms that were attached with the settlement, I believe will have sweeping effects on law enforcement in Louisville. And I would expect other cities will look to model their law enforcement policies with those of Louisville. For a Kentucky city, for Mitch McConnell country to be able to put forth, by the way, a state where the Attorney General, African-American Republican, seems to have difficulty bringing charges against the officers who clearly violated the constitutional rights of Miss Taylor and her companion, whose name I can't, and I'm ashamed to admit I cannot recall, but in honor to him and the unfortunate circumstance that they faced, this no-knock warrant. We have to understand that when police encounter either a suspect or any individual, that's the apex of our Constitution, particularly as African Americans. That is a direct extension of slavery and slave catchers. And that is when we have to apply all of our legal acumen to protect. And to the credit of Lanita Baker and Attorney Crump, they came forth with a civil action that put forth, that laid the groundwork for this groundbreaking settlement. But I think what's more important is the fact that this will be a model, hopefully, for the nation and other cities that are facing this challenge of managing law enforcement. I think we have Black police chiefs, we have Black mayors, we have Black police commissions, we have Black citizen oversight committees, but at the end of the day, there's still this challenge of how to deal with that officer on the streets, that officer in the car. And I think from what I've reviewed, these policies will begin to address that.
All right, thank you. Before we go to the break, I want to talk about another thing that happened in Los Angeles, and that's the two Los Angeles deputy sheriffs who were ambushed, shot. They displayed heroism in saving each other's life. They're still battling in serious condition, but Timothy Allen Simon, that should not be the case. While we have a distrust between police and the Black community and the Black community and the police and vice versa, that type of violence is not tolerated and should not be tolerated anywhere.
It's unacceptable. It's a very tragic act, and we pray for the recovery of the two targeted officers. At the same time, I firmly believe that to attach this to the unrest, the peaceful protest that is going on around the country in an effort to achieve more equitable law enforcement is reckless and misguided. This is one person who shot into the sheriff's automobile. And in my view, until such time that there is an assessment of the facts, a gathering of the facts surrounding this suspect, to try to attach this to the protests going on around the country, which, by the way, has minimized to a large extent, I think is reckless. And I'm hoping that that does not become the case.
All right, when we return, I'll continue my conversation with Timothy Allen Simon and Mark Harris, attorneys at al, and we'll talk about the president having quite a town hall with undecided voters. That's next. Welcome back to the program. So I'm talking to my West Coast connection here on the show tonight, and that's attorneys Mark Harris and Timothy Allen Simon. Gentlemen, you know, the president did something that his critics even have to applaud. He went out and answered questions, albeit he had to get very defensive on the issue as he accepted this town hall meeting in Pennsylvania, answering questions from undecided voters. What did you think about the president responding to some very tough questions, as we've just heard at the top of this, of what they were saying?
I think his behavior was consistent, Kelly, unfortunately. I think the character of the president is definitely in question among voters, myself included. The fact that he could not come up with a clear admission that he mishandled the COVID-19 outbreak. He was very defensive on the subject, said he thinks his administration handled it appropriately. He said, I'm the cheerleader for the United States of America. How would it look if I were doom and gloom and alarmist? It would look like being a responsible president, Mr. President, is what I would suggest. I think that his answer on race, when he said there's not a race problem, that his administration before COVID had done more for the African-American community than any president in recent US history. I've heard him say before, he's been the best president for Blacks since Abraham Lincoln. I mean, there's just a consistency in terms of what I consider a character deficiency. And I thought it was on full display last night, quite honestly. I didn't think he was funny. I didn't think he was pithy. 200,000 people have lost their lives because of the mishandling by this administration of COVID-19. Now, are all 200,000 on the doorstep of the president and the White House? Absolutely not. Would some have died anyhow, even if this had been handled perfectly? Absolutely. But his response that his administration handled it appropriately and there'd be 2 million Americans dead, but for it left me empty and it left me angry. And I think a lot of Americans felt that way.
Timothy?
The president basically touting his management of the COVID-19 pandemic, to me, resembles a team that's been swept in the playoffs and is popping bottles in the locker room. You know, there is no clear mismanagement of this pandemic, and there's been no clear mismanagement of a national and global health crisis that has been administered by this president, particularly when, as he now claims, in order to avoid a panic, he called it a hoax. He's still claiming it's just going to go away. Our hospital admissions have spiked recently in San Francisco. But what I see the president doing is he's jabbing with the lie, then he doubles down with a combination. He doubles down on it. So he hits a jab with a lie, then he comes back with a combination. And he knows to a certain element of the undecided voters, which if you're undecided at this point, that brings issue in and of itself. But for a certain element of the undecided voters, that's enough. It reminds me of the Richard Pryor statement when he was caught in an uncompromising situation. He said to his companion, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? The president is using that same type of angular move in saying, well, I didn't really say that. That's not true. It's a hoax, when there is recorded video, there is recorded audio of him making these statements. But again, to a certain element of this country, that's all they need. And I would watch this president very closely. I believe the Israeli United Arab Emirates peace accord was a hit. It was a victory, no matter how people want to try to assess its sustainability or its outcome. The president is a fighter. He is a fighter. He fights dirty. And I think the biggest mistake that the Democrats and those who want to remove this president could make is to rely on the polls and to think that people are not. It was P.T. Barnum that said a sucker is made every couple of minutes in this country. And I think we have to remember that as we begin to get out to vote and educate the public on why we need regime change.
And does Joe Biden offer an alternative at this point?
If I could move half a tick back before I answer that question, Kelly, I was motivated to suggest and offer this by what my colleague just said. I'm a teacher. I'm a college professor, but at bottom, I'm a teacher. I'm an educator. And one of the things that's the most troubling about this administration and the precedent that the president is establishing is the effect on young people. I teach a class in ethics this semester. And one of the big questions, believe it or not, among my students is, what's the big deal about telling the truth? Can you believe that? That young people are actually, after witnessing this behavior by the president and others, beginning to say, you know, that truth thing that my parents taught me, it's no big deal. Look at how the president's behaving. And he's not by himself. Some of the Democrats in the Congress are doing some of the same things. I thought Pelosi's excuse as to why she wasn't wearing a mask in that beauty shop was ridiculous. My wife said, when I get my hair washed with a service person, I have a mask on. So this whole process of people lying and not telling the full truth, as Timothy said, doubling down on their lies, playing a game of no matter what they said or did, they win, has to stop. And I think that's a horrible legacy that this president's going to leave behind to the American people. Relative to Vice President Biden, you know, he's got a lot to do. But the number one thing he's got to do is to assure people that he's an honorable human being with high character. I think that's a mark he can meet. And I think that's the mark that's going to be most impressive among the American people.
And finally, before I let you go, yesterday I spoke with Admiral Brett Giroir, who, of course, is the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services. And this is a story that is not getting out there largely because of the president's missteps, his miscalculations, and things that he says out of his own mouth. But what was going on at the White House on Monday, I thought was pretty historic. The fact that since 1983, no presidential administration has actually reached out to the Black and brown communities to address the insidious disease known as sickle cell disease. And yet that was done. And we heard from people who are plagued with this problem of going through sickle cell crises throughout their lives. And I think that has to be talked about because sickle cell disease is a menace to the African-American community and the Hispanic community as well. You gentlemen saw that, and you heard from people at the roundtable discussion with the First Lady of the United States, as well as Jaron Smith, who's head of the innovative sector for the Trump administration. So while we're seeing all these things going out that have been causing us to have questions and just say, could he just stop tweeting? Could he just stop talking? We see this sickle cell disease effort. What do you think about that?
Let me tell you, Kelly, before we started, I told you that you're to be commended. This isn't an apple polishing gesture on my part. It's just the truth. You're bringing objective reality to our community, unlike any other journalist in the country. You're bringing this administration. We can't ignore the President of the United States. We can't ignore the executive branch of the United States government. What we need is to be able to contextualize it based upon truth. We just talked about truth a minute ago, and you're bringing that to the American people. I agree that it was important for them to talk about sickle cell. My father had sickle cell trait. I have a variant of sickle cell myself, thalassemia minor. Many African Americans throughout the country applaud the fact that the administration lifted this absolute horrific disease to a point of high visibility. Everything this administration does is not horrific, folks. We know that. There are actions and behaviors on the part of this president reflected in his administration, particularly in the Justice Department under his Attorney General, that are horrific. But we have to acknowledge what he's done relative to HBCUs, what happened yesterday in terms of sickle cell. I think that you appropriately raise it to a position of visibility within our community, and the administration is to be commended for the time and interest and elevation of sickle cell disease that they brought to the American people yesterday.
We must get back to that discussion, as well as how we deal with the pandemic, as well as racial and social justice, as well as criminal justice reform. There are a myriad of issues between now and election, and even beyond the election, regardless of who enters into the Oval Office as the next president of the United States. And I appreciate you gentlemen sharing your valued insights on this program. And as always, before I let you go, because of this fire that's going on, you know that my prayers are with you. The wildfires are out of control. And we have a president who spoke to the governor of California and yet refuted the science and refuted the science that climate change is here and it's impacting not only California, but just look to the Gulf Coast where there's a number of hurricanes just waiting to hit that area. And then not to mention the fires that are in Oregon. These are deadly fires, gentlemen. And you kind of wonder, are we having battles and blessings and curses with this administration as we would in any other administration?
But Kelly, if
Right.
if I could just say on that point, and I know you have to move on, and being in the energy field myself, being a former California Public Utilities Commissioner, I deal with the issue. I was part of the AB 32 Global Solutions Warming Act of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, which really started a national trend of decarbonizing, lowering GHG. But you cannot discuss climate change without also discussing forest management and looking at the history of the earth and wildfires. So I think it's important that we acknowledge the science, but the science should not give us a pass on other responsibilities involving the way our Earth's temperature rises and falls. Am I siding with the president on this? Absolutely not. But I do believe that in California and the West, the environmentalists used to be called tree huggers. That was the derogatory term that was used for environmentalists. And that term came from the fact that they fought against the thinning of forest and logging rights, both on federal and state lands. So what you have is an enormous amount of fuel that has now, been ignited. And fortunately, we're seeing signs of containment. But again, getting back to that, having an independent thought process, for those who are looking at California, think about it. We have done more to drop GHG or CO2 emissions than any other state in the country, yet we are suffering from these wildfires. So we have to take a deeper dive and get away from the labels and really look at the underlying policies surrounding the wildfires.
Gentlemen, I got to leave it there. I thank you both so much. Always insightful to have both of you on, and your perspectives I value greatly on this program. Timothy Allen Simon, Mark Harris, thank you both. So welcome back to the program. One of the good things that's going on is that we are all having a chance to have conversations. Now in Michigan, which of course is a battleground state this season, as it is just about every presidential election year, they've come up with a novel idea over there at the AARP in Michigan. Paula Cunningham, she joins us now. And we've also, joining us from Maryland is Edna Kane Williams, and both ladies represent the AARP. And in Michigan, as I was stating, Paula, you came upon something that is creating and provoking quite an important conversation that Black women in America need to respond to this. Tell me about it.
Absolutely. In the light of COVID-19 and all the disparities and the research that's been done in terms of how it's impacted, particularly people of color and older adults, in terms of just our history, in terms of everything that's happened in both civil injustice and everything else, African Americans, women's voices have been sort of quiet during all of this, other than the mourning that's going on. And so we wanted to find out, people are asking all the time, so are you supporting this campaign? Are you supporting that campaign? AARP is nonpartisan. We don't have a PAC. We're absolutely non-political. We look out after what's best for older adults. So everyone's asking us, which agenda are we going to support? We said, let's get women together and figure out who's going to support our agenda, particularly women of color, and with the focus on this particular program of African American women. What's their agenda for their health and their wealth? What's their agenda for financial security as they age, and to make certain that they have the kind of resources and the kind of support services that they need for those that they're taking care of? And so we're pulling women together from all over the state. We've got a phenomenal panel of women who are going to tell their own stories, but it's this Thursday, September 17th from 11:30 to 1:30. And we're looking forward to lifting the voices of African American women throughout the state of Michigan. So it's My Sisters, M-I instead of M-Y, My Sisters and Friends, conversations that count. And we're going to make them count because we're going to advocate for their agenda with elected officials.
Edna, you're the Senior Vice President of AARP. What do you think about all of this? I'm just going to say, I think it's a great and novel idea to get sisters together to talk.
Well, I'm Senior Vice President of Multicultural Leadership at AARP, a long-standing partner of Paula. She's always ahead of the pack. It is so important that we provide a platform for African American women to talk to each other about what's important this year, what's at stake. As Paula said, we're nonpartisan, but we have a lot of skin in this game, no pun intended. And so these kinds of convenings make it easier for African American women to talk to each other, to hear different viewpoints. And I do want to flag that hearing different viewpoints, I'm so concerned about the country these days that we've become so unilateral that we only think one way, and if someone is on the outside of our thinking, we totally shut it down. No, conversation, discussion, discourse is important. And I salute Paula and her team for providing that for African American women in Michigan.
Edna, beyond Michigan, what do you want Black women to know?
Well, we want Black women to understand what's at stake. I'm a social media maven, and I've actually picked up a lot of frustration that African American women feel that a lot of people are putting this election on their backs. That we always show up, we always are present, we always try to make our voices heard. But now is not the time to get jaded, to get frustrated, to bow out. We are very much in the throes of what we call voter engagement, making sure that everybody understands, again, in a nonpartisan way, but no one can deny how important this election is. So we want all African American women to understand that even with them showing up and showing out in the past, we still can't take anything for granted. If you want attention being paid to health disparities, to financial disparities. African American women are on the low end of so many issues, that the only way we can make a way is to vote and to be heard. And that's really what we want all African American women to understand is now is not the time to take a back seat. Sisters, it's not a time to take a back seat. We have to be there. And I so admire the tennis player Naomi Osaka in her homage to our ancestors and understanding that we're here because of them. So African American women, we've made it this far because of our ancestors. It's now a part of our legacy to make sure that we push forward for our children and future generations.
Well, it is true. I want to take a break, and when we return, I've got just a couple more questions. I'm talking to two wonderful ladies, Edna Kane Williams of AARP and Paula Cunningham of AARP. We'll be right back to talk about more of this conversation that counts. My sisters and friends. Back with more after this. You know, we're 100 years out, women's suffrage. And, you know, the work that went into getting the passage of that, the suffrage movement, a large part it came from Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman and other Black women who were out there on the front lines helping women be recognized for their right to vote. And yet when it came time for suffrage to take place, they were moved aside and still had to continue with the struggle. To that end, when you look at the modern day election that we're looking at right now, a lot of the mainstream media is focusing on white suburbia, in particular white women. And to my mind, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute now, probably the most important, significant voter out there is the Black American woman. Mm-hmm. So how do you bring in your white counterparts as well to engage in this conversation, to engage in this process of understanding that Black women have a place in this society and they've made so many significant contributions to grow America and make it great?
I absolutely agree with you that African American women are going to make or break this election. Again, no matter how what side you're on. um 8 weeks out, 7 weeks out. I don't know that we have any time to convince folks, but we will be the deciding factor. And that's power in and of itself. It's happened in the past. It's happened in several state elections where seats turned unexpectedly. And when they did the data dump, they realized it was because of African American women and how they voted. So it may take folks time to catch up with this, but that reckoning is coming, that you cannot ignore the power of African American women when we vote.
Paula?
Absolutely. And, I would encourage people, you don't have a right to be apathetic about this or to be nonchalant about this. You have not earned a right to just say, oh, well, it's someone, whether the stop sign goes on your corner street, that's an election issue. Whether you're voting for healthcare or Social Security, that's an election issue. And look at all the people, like they're real indignant almost about this when people say, well, I don't know if I'm going to vote or not. Just look at John Lewis. I mean, look at his legacy and his life. Look at all the people who've come before us, those that you just mentioned, the Sojourner Truth, people who went through the South and tried to get to the other side just so that we could have a right to be able to vote or even go to school. And now schools are asked to be to work from on home and online, and they don't have broadband, and they don't have the kind of media that they need, a broadband or social structure that they need to do that. It continues. So if you don't lift your voice now, then shut up. Just shut up for the rest of the year. Don't talk to me. Don't say anything to me. Because if you can't find a reason now to go to the polls and say, here, cast your ballot, even if you don't like everything that's going on, your voice will change it. And that's why it's not a one and done event. We're going to continue to do this, continue to monitor the progress that we say we need. And we can't look at the whole world, but I can certainly look at Michigan and say, here's what Michigan women need. And it's not that different than what the rest of the country is saying as well. Social Security, financial security, more access to contracts, to government contracts, more access to work and saving opportunities, more access to quality health care. Women are taking care of their loved ones more than anyone else. They're wanting their loved ones to stay at home. Give them some support rather than sending them to a nursing home. And you know what's going on with nursing homes, or sending them to a long-term care facility. We're not saying there's anything bad with those facilities, but if people could just stay home 1 year longer or 2 years longer with some support, activities of daily living, some help with that, it can make a difference in the quality of their life. So I could go on, Kelly. I'm going to be quiet because I could take over your whole show talking about it.
I love your passion. I love your passion. And again, it takes place when the conversations that count?
This Thursday, September 17th, 11:30 to 1:30 a.m. And we have just a phenomenal lineup. I want to mention them very quickly. We've got the Regina Bell, who's going to be on a panel telling her story. We've got Martha Reeves and the Vandellas going to be telling her story. Jackie Clark from the Clark Sisters. And we're going to conclude with the one and only CeCe Winans, who's going to make remarks and sing a tribute to the women in the room. So you don't want to miss this, folks. AARP.org/MI. AARP.org/MI. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. And Edna, I'm happy to say that I've had at least Martha Reeves is coming on. I've had Jackie Clark on, as well as Regina Bell, and all three of them are outstanding, and they care about America. My compliments to AARP and all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for promoting this. We appreciate it.
All right. God bless you both. I'll be listening. I'll be watching, as a matter of fact.
Oh, good.
Okay. All right. We're coming back with more after this. I'm joined now by the wonderful DeLuz brothers. They are Craig and David DeLuz, twins, brotherly love, except when it comes to politics. They do have a difference of opinion. One is on the left, one is on the right. Right now, they're talking about authentic. Tell me about authentic and how impactful this is going to be for a lot of Americans. Craig, we'll start with you.
I'll tell you, we live in a society where it's funny. It's very difficult to talk about politics and really be able to have a real conversation. And so we came together and we wanted to produce this film to show how important it is, how we can have these discussions, and to show the diaspora of political viewpoints in the Black community. So I think because my brother and I enjoy having these sorts of conversations, we felt it was important that we do that in general. I mean, the Black community do that in general.
So David?
Yeah,
Authentic.
Exactly. And the film, Authentic, the film, it's a great short. It's not real long. It's about 9 to 10 minutes, but it's an opportunity for folks to really see the diversity of opinion within the African-American community. They try to, politicians and pundits try to treat the Black community as a monolith, that as we only have one set of opinions, we only have one set of issues. But at the end of the day, we are a diverse population with varying opinions on a range of issues. And quite frankly, I think in some ways we're more conservative than people give us credit for, but we're also more liberal, I think, than people give us credit for. And Authentic was an opportunity to give voice to all of that. And we just want to encourage everyone, if they can, to go to our website, www.authenticthefilm.com. Check it out. There's trailers there. There's a little information about the film. And, it's a Tommy Ross production. He's a good friend of both of ours. And he was the genesis of the idea for this. And he just utilized what the Deleuze brothers do and created this wonderful cast to really make our community come to life.
So let's take a look at it real quick and tell me about this trailer that you've put out. Let's watch.
But instead, we have these fools on TV and social media selling us poison. They living big lives and breaking in all the big bucks while they drive fancy cars and they're living rich. They're telling us racism is stopping us. But their very presence on these platforms is telling us different. But we don't see it. You know what? No, we don't want to see it. We don't want to. We'd rather watch these folks on TV tell us what we need and what we think, while they make a whole lot of money off of us, yes, and our challenge. You know what? Racism didn't stop them. How about they teach that lesson? Instead of teaching us doom and gloom, how about show us the light to the path of success so that we can follow that?
Look, we all know this country ain't perfect.
No, that's right.
And we got a long way to go before we have equity and racial harmony. But don't we have blacks who are the heads of large corporations, members of Congress, Supreme Court justices? And maybe I was dreaming, but didn't we just have a black president of the United States? Twice?
2 times.
Okay, so that looks extremely exciting, and it happens in most barbershops anywhere in America, especially when the brothers are talking about each other. Usually we're jonesing about each other, got some beef with somebody, trying to settle that, and sometimes politics gets real hot and heavy. But it's like brothers playing chess or checkers out on the streets as well. I just think this was a magnificent idea that you guys came up with. Tell me more about the setting and what that was like.
We decided that we wanted to find an authentic spot where people come together and talk about issues, and there's no better place than the barbershop. And that right there immediately sparked an opportunity for us to have a really, I think, an authentic conversation. There's that word again, authentic.
Yeah,
an authentic conversation about issues that are impacting our community. And so we put together, I think, what is a great cast that has had a great line on what we were trying to accomplish, and they were all bought in hook, line, and sinker. So we're really excited about the end product and what it's going to mean to America.
Yeah, it was very important to us to make sure that we used local folks here in the Sacramento area. It was very important to us that we, from beginning to end, this is an African-American Black production from our editor, our producers, our actors. And once again, we wanted to make sure that we showed that in many cases, you had people who, on one side, you hear them talk, they might sound like a conservative. On the other side, you might hear them, they sound like a liberal. But that's where most people, and by the way, most Black people are on political issues. It can vary depending on what the issue is. And we believe we did a good job of capturing that in this film.
Is it something you had a script, or did you just drop a bomb when the people say, "Okay, let's talk about it"?
Well, so we started with a script, But what we made sure to do with each actor was to say, look, we want you to make this you. So if you wouldn't say this way, say it the way that you would say it. Or if there's a particular point that you want to plug in there, something that you've been thinking about that's on your mind, say that. So, well, I imagine you figured that wasn't probably hard for David and I, since we talk so much about politics. But once again, that's why we really believe, why the name Authentic fits so well. Because really, the people talking aren't just speaking lines from a script, but they're also in part speaking lines, things that they believe.
Yeah, and David, I like the whole thing, and a lot of times when you go into a barber shop and you're just sitting there talking to each other, and you get beyond sports, you start getting down into issues like politics and the economy rather, and faith. Man, you walk away and just feel like some knowledge was dropped on you, some wisdom.
Exactly. And that's what we were going for. We were trying to be able to leave people with just a few nuggets, entertain them, leave them with some things to think about, to mull over. And I think we accomplished that, so really excited about showing it to the world. And so remember, go to authenticthefilm.com, check it out, download it, check it out, and share it with your friends.
Thank you both, Craig and David Deleuze, the Deleuze brothers, right here on the Kelly Wright Show, talking about their film, Authentic. Make sure you check it out, just like they said, because it's the real deal, y'all. It's the real deal. So take a look at it. We'll be back with more after this. And welcome back to the program. I want to thank all of the guests who appeared on tonight's show. And always, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out to watch. I appreciate you. I was talking about encouragement in my opening observations. In my final word, I talk about it once again. Encouragement is a great motivator. It makes people exert greater effort to accomplish their objectives. My friends, this is a time that we need to encourage each other to make the vision plain. And let me leave you with this. If you saw the size of the blessing coming your way against all odds, you would understand the magnitude of the battle you are fighting. Therefore, don't give up on your dreams. Keep on striving, my friends, and be encouraged. And be righted and ignited and united to keep spreading love, freedom, and peace. Good night.
Come on, y'all. Get on board. Mankind won't survive if our hearts beat inside a hateful rhythm. You see, love isn't bought, but comes with a price of forgiveness, and we all bleed the same. Yeah. If you don't feel it now, just wait. It's coming on, the love train. Just give it time, give it time. Get on board. That means you, and you and you. Get on board. Brother.